A new documentary is about to screen at the Sydney Film Festival next month, a documentary called ShoPaapaa. Love the title. We will discuss that. And it's my great pleasure to have the co-director of ShoPaapaa, Molly Reynolds, who co-directed it with Shekhar Bassi. Bassi.
Yes.
Molly, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Pleasure to talk to you because this is such an immersive sort of documentary. How did you first meet Shekhar in the first place?
We met at the Cannes Film Festival, actually, in person, and he had a relationship with Rolf de Heer, who also produced this film, and in forging a friendship, we maintained it over the years. So we were there for Charlie's Country, which is circa 2015, or maybe even earlier, 14. And so, yes, we formed a firm friendship, and he's a filmmaker who's made a number of shorts, and Shekhar was also diagnosed with this condition in which his skeletal system is disintegrating, and on some days he would send to me video messages, and these video messages had something that was so cinematic about them that I approached him and said, "We make a documentary together," and he said, "No, thank you, Molly." A little time passed, and come on, Shekhar, we can do this. And he was very he was reticent. Anyway, when he was shielding during COVID in 2020, I thought, right, okay, well, I'll, catch up with him regularly, because the nature of being so isolated and things like that. And then that film idea is still in my head. And I put it to him once again, and he said, "Look, I think the story is bigger than me. I'm good to do it."
What an interesting process. Now, speaking of processes, let's talk about the actual filming, because he reveals so much about his day-to-day existence and his difficulties, etc., in his house in London. In terms of you working together with him in fashioning, I suppose, the documentary and what he filmed and what he sent to you and so on, how did all that work?
We would catch up daily, via video and talk. I suppose we did have a period of pre-production where, before he started shooting and we were getting things right technically with the camera and the sound, we would talk daily. And then at the end of every day, he would upload the rushes and I would have a look at them. And so when I spoke with him the next day, we sort of say, oh, maybe a little more of this and a little more of that. We had a lot of footage because we shot for over 40 days, and he certainly gave us plenty to work with. So that was how it was. That's how it evolved, was daily talking, about, okay, well, yes, we know this, but what about balancing it perhaps with that, etc.
How interesting. And so he used a single camera. And he took that with him everywhere he went and so on, because there are some scenes which look quite dangerous, that he was trying to get upstairs or go down and all that. It's just incredible the way he filmed it.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. And because Shekhar appreciates cinema, I think. And, there was a rig that he attached to the front of him, and he could attach the camera there. And I really liked the motion of the footage. I think it does something to the film. It takes away the possibility of it being a static film, and because the camera gives it motion, but it's motion integral to a man with a disability, or a disabled man, trying to get his way from one side of the room to the other. And having seen the film, Peter, like there's when he's brushing he's sweeping the floor in the lounge room, and he's kind of set the camera way back. And I kind of get quite nervous watching him, because I think, my God, he's going to fall over at any point. And when he makes his bed, my goodness, I wouldn't bother changing the sheets.
How fascinating. And of course, all of this would take him so much time to do, and to get around, to maneuver his house. I just found it gobsmacking insofar as that he was able to manage, because no one, of course, was able to visit him pretty much because of lockdown and so on.
Exactly. So there is a scene in the film where Shekhar is making his bed, and it's quite simply laborious. And I think prior to him having to shield in the pandemic, his brother and family members would come and assist him with that sort of stuff. And yet, he had no support, so it was down to him. And you could say he was able to fill his days with, the 5 minute, the task that would take us 5 minutes, in turn takes him 50 minutes. It's, he really shared so much, not only so much of himself, but Shekhar was also able to distill what it is like to have to navigate life with a disability. He shared it so well, and so eloquently and so succinctly. That's the word I'm reaching for.
Yes. And of course, he has an acting background, and he's a filmmaker, and has done so much. So I suppose in terms of the way you two work together to fashion the documentary, would have been quite a good process, because he already has a strong understanding of what would work on screen.
Oh, look, yes, that certainly catapulted us into another space. Early on, we did have a little creative tension, because Shekhar is so based in drama, and the way in which he was crafting this work was more as a dramatic piece, and rather than as a documentary. And so we presented the work to the world as a hybrid work, and as a classic documentary. There are some constructions in there that remove it from being a documentary, but in the end, that's the place it found itself.
Yeah. Yes, I was as I was watching it, I was thinking docudrama all the way through, that this is a real situation, but it's been heightened, or it's been manipulated in some way to bring the story to an audience.
Yes.
In a way that would involve the audience as well, because it is so involving, especially when he looks at the camera in his very strict, carefully described sort of tone.
Exactly. Can you pause, Peter?
That's all right. We're talking with Molly Reynolds at the moment, who is the director of co-director with Shekhar Bassi of ShoPaapaa. So yes,
thank you. So will you be able to deal with that? I was spluttering away. I just couldn't help it.
Sort of talk while you were out, so it's all fine.
Okay. Okay then, everybody. Sorry, I just the tickle in my throat. It's not COVID, and I thought, well, I may as well exit the room, cough, and recover. But here I am. Yes.
It's quite okay. We discussed this as a process before we started the interviews.
Yes.
I did it. No, not at all. So anyway, so the way he looks at the camera, and you really feel as if he's evoking what he's feeling and so on. And I suppose you must have, as you said, discussed that carefully with him about not going too much into the drama realm and to stick more into the more naturalistic documentary realm.
It was, I think, no, we didn't actually have explicit conversations about it. And when it came to performance, that's all Shekhar there. It was like, you craft and character is perhaps not quite the right, you craft your sense of self that will give the story that will give the film its story, and while all of it is grounded in truth, there are constructions within to be able to illustrate the truth. And it's a curious thing for me, because I'm a documentary filmmaker, and it's always about presenting the integrity of the footage within the documentary, because it is really easy to manipulate footage and have it, have it present as something other than it is. And sometimes, there is the temptation to do that, because you can sucker punch your audience, that you've got them where you want them. But it's always best, I think, to exercise restraint in that regard.
Sure. No, that's a good explanation for that. It's interesting how he was visited by two children. Were they his nephews? And of course,
niece, yes.
Niece.
Vera and Aria, which was a great to kind of bring out the, sort of take the film externally, kind of remember, what else is happening in the rest of the world, and how he was so detached from it.
Yes, so interesting. And of course, there's a sad element to, because he is Indian descent, etc. He's a victim of racism, which is just appalling, and we see evidence of that in the film.
Oh yes, and I don't think any society can escape its capacity to discriminate, and but so there's something, I don't know, there's something about what Shekhar has to experience in the UK that sort of seems to be a notch beyond what we're capable of in Australia. And in Australia, I feel that we can and we do behave appallingly, with our First Nation peoples, with refugees, etc., etc. But some of the stories that Shekhar tells, I kind of go, you're joking, So yeah, he has to contend with that in his life as well, and as do many people of colour, in the UK and in the world. Yes.
Very sad in many respects. ShoPaapaa, tell me about the title.
Yes. I when I first pitched the project, it was to the Adelaide Film Festival, and I called it Still Standing, or Standing Still, and I thought, goodness gracious me, as the sort of producer trying to sell the project, I can't even remember the own title. And it was sort of, we were wanting to reach for something that was distinct, and in fact ShoPaapaa is the name for that, the nickname that the children who go to greet they, as we call Shekhar's character, at the window, they call him ShoPaapaa, and we were going to call him ShoPaapaa, but then that sort of got a little convoluted, but the name stuck, and it's a lovely sounding word.
It is. It works so well, but and I think the audience will be curious to say, "What's this about? This is an interesting title. Let's explore."
Yes, hopefully, yeah.
Absolutely, they should. So, in terms of then fashioning the edits, the final 93 minutes or whatever it is that the documentary is, did you work with Shekhar about the final edit? How did all that work?
No, that one he handed over to me. So he was very much the lead during the shoot, and he led that phase. And then the footage came over, and so in looking at the footage, it was like, okay, well, how can we execute this boldly? Do something a little different stylistically. I was working with Tanya Nimi, and she was based in Melbourne at the time, and so and then there was Tom Hoysenroder, the sound designer, and he was in Adelaide, and then there was Mark Eland, the great picture grader and colorist, and he was in Sydney. So it was a really remote film, and we all worked remotely. on this film. And so, you know, having conversations, and in fact, even looking at my screen, talking with you, Peter, it's sort of like, you know, split screen. It's very much the look of the moment, isn't it?
It is definitely. Well done on that. Well done on putting all that together. And I'm intrigued to know what's Shekhar's current situation.
Well, okay then. Yes, it is. He's not as isolated as what he was, but unfortunately, the National Health Service, their whole system has jammed up, and Shekhar has committed himself to having a 24-hour major procedure in which 3 teams of surgeons come in, and they're basically going to rebuild his spine. It's a highly, highly risky operation, and it was meant to happen last year, but it's not going to happen this year. And, you know, it will almost need to happen next year because his skeletal system is disintegrating. And if it doesn't happen soon, there'll be nothing to rebuild him. But, you know, by definition, he could be the bionic man, you know, when he gets rebuilt. But, you know, he's a man of tremendous boldness and courage to kind of present himself on screen as he does, you know, as he's, you know, sort of as his body is failing him.
Amazing story. Hopefully he can improve and the operation is successful. So, yes. So tell me about the release of ShoPaapaa. It's at the Sydney Film Festival, premiering next month, which is terrific.
Yes.
How else then will the documentary roll out?
That's a work in progress. You know, I always naively think that when I finished a film, like, it's done. But I go, no. It's only, you know, it's sort of, you know, the finishing of the film is the second of 3 stages. And then next there's the work of you know, releasing it and getting it distributed. And, you know, you need the heft of good people, you know, good, talented, experienced people to make that happen. And I was working with Alicia Brescianini and Kathy Gallagher of ABC Film with My Name is Gulpilil, and they've got ShoPaapaa as a part of their stable, and it'll be interesting to see how we can work this film, you know, and the nature of the appetite for it, because I would say, for example, that Victorians would kind of go, we're living this lockdown. You know, we don't need to revisit it just yet. Sydney-siders will be a little different because they will be like, oh, you know, we're in the cinema, we'll take what we can get. No, so not haven't yet, you know, sort of really worked ShoPaapaa.
Sure.
That's my next task.
Yeah, but I can see working with niche audiences and so on. So hopefully that will work. I'm glad you mentioned My Name is Gulpilil. I must congratulate you on such a fine documentary, and I suppose there is a tinge of sadness with that. How is David doing now?
Look, I happened to be in Adelaide at the beginning of the week and caught up with David then, and he's frail and fragile, you know. He's frail of body and fragile of mind, and he fears his death is soon, and it's like, no, David, it's, you know, it's okay. You can and will and should rally. And so, look, he's okay. He's okay. Yeah, you know. Yes.
I was so impressed by the film, and I was always wondering how much permission he gave you in terms of filming his life, and what you were able to reveal about him in the documentary, and how much you perhaps had to hold back or whatever, because that's always such an interesting process.
It is. It is. David. He gave his all. I think he's like, there's nothing here that nothing that I have to hide. It was almost from a cultural perspective and the way he thinks about, the world. Like this is me. There were some days when we went to shoot, because we shot for almost 70 days, where David was tired and frustrated and grumpy and in a bad mood. I think they were only, 2-3 days at the most, and he's like, enough already. But it was footage that he would be quite comfortable with us using, I'm sure. I did have to speak with him about saying, David, we've got to go the good, bad, and ugly, because the good means nothing unless your audience, your fans understand the whole of you. Because I think from his perspective, it's like, why would I bring shame on myself? But once he understood that we needed to deal with it, he signed up for it. Yeah.
Excellent. And the documentary has rolled out, hasn't it? It's getting coverage both Australia and overseas.
Yes, yep. Kathy and Alicia, they released the film, and it did very well at the box office, given that we had lost Victoria to lockdown on the week of its release. It's broadcast on the ABC, and it's travelled well. It has, yeah.
That's great. So Molly, I'm intrigued. How do you decide what projects you take on board?
Oh, Peter, they sort of come to you, in many ways. I've got often got a few sort of little seedlings there that I look at, and sometimes I give some water, or and then I got time to plant this one in the ground. But yes, they do sort of come. And I think with both ShoPaapaa and my name is Gulpilil, I had these little kernel of ideas, and then it takes on its own life. It becomes what it will become, and I think my role as a director is to make sure that I can realise the potential in it all. So, yes, both Gulpilil and ShoPaapaa were different to what I thought they were at the beginning, and that is a part of documentary filmmaking, where you've got to grow with your film, really.
Sure, no, I understand. And it's been a while since I've spoken with Rolf de Heer, but how's he going at the moment?
Oh, he's a man in production. He's working on a film called The Mountain, and he's finished his shoot, 4 weeks shooting in the Flinders Ranges, and then there'll be 4 weeks shooting in Tasmania. And so they're just about to cross over to the second part of the shoot, and he'll be in post-production by the end of the year. Called it a COVID nimble film, because he had another one on the go that he was ready to shoot it in the winter of last year, and of course COVID, the pandemic, and it's not a sort of film that is easy to pick up and run with. So he started to write his COVID nimble film called The Mountain.
How interesting. Looking forward to it. So Molly, What's your next project?
Oh, Peter, I've kind of got to take care of these two babies that I brought into life in the last 12 months. And I'm pretty well going to take myself into the end of 2021, and then wake up in 2022 and go, right, what am I going to seize by the horns, my hands by the horns, or whatever, and take on another one.
Look forward to it. Molly, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. ShoPaapaa is premiering at the Sydney Film Festival next month, and then will be seen thereafter. And we've been speaking to Molly Reynolds, the director of ShoPaapaa, and of course, my name is Gulpilil. Molly, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Molly.
Okay, yeah, that was jolly good. Thank you. Sorry about the coughing. Yeah.
All fine. Thanks again.
All fine. We'll live with it. Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.